Welcome in, builders. This week we are taking a look at Arcoscephale, the Old Kingdom. This is a nation that has not been able to progress itself particularly well into the Middle Age. And we will see that they're feeling it. They're feeling it. We have made some improvements. We actually do have like legitimate hoplite units now, but what they go up against in the Middle Age, it's a little bit of a struggle. It's a bit of a struggle. Let's see what they're all about. Arcoscephale is a old kingdom. Although its glory days are long past, the ancient astrologers who aided past kings in building Arcoscephale into a mighty empire have recently emerged from their century-old seclusion to restore the Old Kingdom to the world domination once more. Priestesses with great knowledge of healing are trained in ancient temples built during the peak of the Old Kingdom. The priestesses are able to scry upon enemy troops and provinces that are located within the god's dominion. The war machine of ancient Arcoscephale has not changed over the past centuries. Cumbersome plate hauberks and long spears are still used, and cavalry is primitive. Elephants and chariots, unpredictable but devastating, are still popular. As we can see with the lore here, we're struggling a little bit. We just have not kept up with the times. For national features, we are humans. Our military is heavy spear-armed infantry. We also have elephants and chariots. Magic-wise, we have good astral. We have okay amounts of fire, earth, water, although it's quite random on the pathing that we get. And we have pretty good nature. For priests, we are average. We have recruitable holy twos. And we have the ability to use healing, which is rather useful. For Dominion, we actually have a special ability called Scry, which gives us accurate and automatic military reports inside our dominions. This is the same ability that we had in early age, and what that translates to is if your dominion is in a province, you have a 100% accurate scouting report. So if there are 97 barbarians, we know there are 97 barbarians. There's no plus or minus like you normally have on scout reports. For scales and blesses, we get an order limit of +1. We use standard forts of the era, which is castles during Middle Age. And our labs are half price at 300, which is pretty nice because we're going to need a lot of mages. For sites, we have the Tower of 1,000 Stars. This gives us our cap-only mage and our cap-only sacred, along with 4 astral and 1 nature gem income. Pretty good income here. If you want something else, this could translate into 2 of any gem per turn if you were to do alchemy with them, but we have plenty of uses for astral pearl, so I would be hesitant to burn all of those into something else. Units and sacreds. So we have a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to units. As previously mentioned, we haven't really progressed particularly well, and we'll see that right away here with the slinger. This is just a baseline slinger. It hasn't really changed. He is at least wearing a hat, I suppose, but this is a bog standard human wearing some leather gear and a sling. He is not going to be able to do a lot of work. Slingers were already kind of niche in the early age, and they have definitely been outclassed, especially with the introduction of the crossbow. On the bright side, I suppose, 7 gold, 2 resources, 3 recruitment. A bunch of these guys inside a fort still give half a fort defense strength each anyways, and you could get a lot of them. Next up, we have the Arcoscephale. Not sure if I'm saying that one right. This one, it's not very good. Protection is 9, and that's really only 8 on the body. Now, he does have a shield, but this is not a hoplon. And he's only using a bronze spear, which was already kind of mid-tier tech in early age. Not great there. On the bright side, it does have formation fighter, so you're going to get an extra guy in the square with these. In addition, 10 gold, 8 resources, 9 recruitment. You can get a lot of these guys. These would make good just chaff standing out in front, I suppose. Or maybe just you need to widen your line a little bit and you just need some numbers. Otherwise, not particularly impressive. Next up, we have a Peltast. Again, hasn't really progressed here. We're still using a wicker shield, leather armor, we have the bronze spear, we have a javelin. Again, his cost is very cheap, but otherwise it's just a random human guy. Next up, we finally have something that is a little bit better. We have a hoplite. This is a decent troop. So we are using a plate hauberk. We have a hoplite helmet and a hoplon. So well armored, giving us 18 actual on the body plus the shield. In addition, we are using a length 4 long spear that we're decent with. And we have formation fighters, so we're going to have 4 of these in a single square. These are decent. 18 protection is not too bad. This is a totally usable troop, and usually who I make most of my lines up with. Next up, we have the Hypast. This is another similar unit. He is a little bit lighter armored. He has a plate cuirass, so on his body he only has a 14, and he has gone down to a length 3 spear. Still has formation fighter, however. But for 16 gold, 25 resources, 23 recruitment, compare that up here. For just a few more resources, we could jump up higher in protection and in length of weapon. I think that this guy is just completely outclassed by the hoplite. Next up, we have the charioteer. And unfortunately, this is another unit that has not progressed. This is the same early age chariot with a horse with no armor on it. These were already a little bit questionable in the early age, and I think they're very questionable in the middle age. They're faster than an elephant, so if you're trying to like zip to the rear before things have a chance to go off, maybe. The archers are less useful because things have started to armor up a little bit more. You're not going to even have a ton of them. Not too impressed with the chariot here. Elephant riders. Elephants can still trample, and our war elephant does have 11 protection. Again, archers or whatever. I generally have to use some of these to at least get expansion started because we have to have something that can kill things. While these guys are pretty defensive and they're okay at fighting in a line, they can't really compare to a good elephant squish. Now, one thing to note about the charioteer and the elephant, however, we have a lot of formation fighters, both with these guys and with our sacred. So if they retreat back through your lines, casualties can be horrific, especially if you've bunched up 2 or 3 lines deep with 4 or 5 guys in each square. It can be really, really bad to have that retreat happen. Next up, we have the Heart Companion. This is our capital only sacred, and it's okay. So 20 gold, 31 resources, 23 recruitment points. We have a slightly better than human chassis, a little extra HP there. He's decently strong and has a little training. He's wearing the same armor as our heavier hoplite, and he's using the same spear essentially. His big claim to fame is A, he's sacred, and B, he has formation fighter 5. This means that you can actually have 5 of these guys in a single square. So for attack density, these guys are actually really good. And being able to give them a bless makes them usable. Again, nothing to write home about, but we've moved away from early age with sacred giants and stuff everywhere, and we have moved into seeing a lot more human sacred. So as far as sacreds go, this is okay. I would say think about a repel bless more than anything else. Length 4 is still perfectly fine. Some extra attack would be really nice on top of that. Otherwise, I don't think this is like a hell bless chassis or anything like that. Heroes, commanders, and prophet. For heroes, we actually have 4. We have hero. This is just a extra good leader. He has 200 leadership. That is very, very high. And he is geared like a hoplite. So a bonus commander, essentially. Next, we have the Hierophant. This is a kind of a rainbow mage. He's got 1 of each of the elemental and 2 astral, along with being priest level 2. It's whatever. Doesn't really bring anything new that we didn't have. I suppose we don't normally have air magic, so that is something. You could go out and site search, maybe make some alquils or something. Next up, we have the Son of Titans. Again, just a pretty good leader. He does have invulnerability and awe, but it's essentially a human chassis, so your mileage may vary if you want to do something beyond lead troops, but as a troop leader, he's well equipped and he's extra tough, so yeah, that's fine. 150 leadership's totally usable. Next up, we have the Coppered. This is like a early era, what were they called? Melix, I think. And that's basically what she is. She's got 100% leadership, or 100 leadership. She has inspirational. She reduces unrest. She's got healer. We have other sources of healer. She has recuperation, magic being. Should be noted, she has 3 nature, which is the highest nature we can get. It's a priest level 2 and has water 1. So you get her, maybe you can do some extra special naturey stuff with her. Otherwise, just another good leader for you to use. So nothing too special to write home about here, but at least all 4 of them are totally usable. There's nobody here that's just garbage. Next up, we take a look at our commanding line, and we've got a scout, just regular scout here. Not much to say about it other than I appreciate having recruitable cheap scouts, always handy. Next up, we have a mounted commander. This guy's a little bit of an oddball to me. I don't know who exactly you'd be using him with. I guess he leads the chariots because he has speed 18, so he's faster than any of your foot leadership. Or I guess, and your elephants, he has the same map move, so I suppose. But the problem there is he's only 75 leadership, so no bonus to morale. And if you're going to move elephants or other tramplers around, you probably want a morale bonus. So I don't know. I don't love this guy. I think you start with one of these, and I would try to transition him over to a fort builder as soon as possible. Unless maybe you're leading some indie cavalry around, maybe. Next up, we have the Hipast commander. Same problem I had with the other one. I mean, at least he's 100 leadership, but otherwise unremarkable. It's only 1 recruitment point. Next up, we have the hoplite commander. I like this guy more. At least he's heavily armored with a length 4 weapon for his own protection. Also 1 recruitment point, so you can get a couple of these guys out. What I like more is the strategos. Despite being old, I don't want him to be in combat anyways, so that's totally fine. And I would prefer the 150 leadership for the +2 morale bonus, both for our line troops who are not particularly brave, or for our elephants who are definitely not brave. 9. This is my preferred leader, and because we have healers in our faction, it's not quite so bad to have old leadership. He's not like super duper old, so he gets by. He gets by. Do note, map move 10 is very slow. I did not mention that on our other guys, but we have a lot of heavy armored troops that are very slow on the map. We are not rushing anywhere with these guys. Next up, we have the Heria. This is a recruit out of any place, so all you need is a temple and a lab, and you get a nature 1, priest level 1, healer. Not too bad. That's usable. Nature 1 is a fine combat spell path. It's not great or anything, but you could do a little self-buffing. You could throw some webs or some vine arrows or animate some trees. You can get some stuff done, and they can help you bless. For 7 research at 62 gold per year, they're also okay at efficiency, although very slow, and they do give you a cheap healer. I do not mind these. They are a little pricey up front, but they have some utility. They're not bad researchers. They're fine. Next up, we have the Mystic. This is from any of our forts that also have labs. Now, these guys are kind of similar to what we had in early age in that we're guaranteed Astral 1, and then we get a 100% of fire, water, earth, and astral. And then 3 independent checks of a 50-50 for a fire, a water, a earth. So in theory, you could proc all of these things. So you could have fire, water, earth, astral 2, for example. So they can actually be relatively high in path, and these are paths that have some cross spells, so you could do some magma stuff, you could do some acid stuff. Yeah, it's okay. Rust stuff, I suppose. It's okay. Mainly, these guys are going to be trying to communion up, because unless you get fire 2 or water 2 or earth 2 or astral 2, there's not a lot of spells you can actually do. So if you just get a wide spread, you kind of don't have anything to do in combat other than join a communion. For research, though, 150 gold per year for only 12. That's a little bit on the rippy side. If I look at one of my mystics here, this guy, because he got more pathing, he's actually a 14 for 152. So if you luck into those 50-50s, it's not quite so bad, but it's still not super efficient, unfortunately, because we need a lot of research. Next up, we have the Arcoscephale. This is like an upgraded version. She is a priest level 2, nature 1, healer 3. I like these quite a bit. If you could get one of these to run around with your army, not only can you do some sermons of courage, and some self-buffing with the nature as previously mentioned, but she can do 3 heal checks per turn. And because we have lots of heavily armored troops, that if they don't get killed outright, they probably do end up racking up afflictions, and it's always great to just be able to wipe those out. In addition, we are a nation that can do Mind Hunt. I'll talk about that more when we get to spells, but one of the side effects of Mind Hunt can be feeble-minded, and you can cure feeble mind with healer. So in this one here, I'm getting double teamed by Mikland and by Solaria at the same time. I got feeble-minded because I accidentally tried to hit a spot I didn't think had mages, but they had astral mages over here. And so both of my geared out mind hunters that I have got feeble-minded, and just this turn, they have healed. They can't heal the lost eye, though, because we replaced it with this. So otherwise, they could be healed. And a lot of these old men here have gained and lost afflictions. I just have several healers. I wanted to make sure I could keep this running. I've been wiping out the leadership over here, stranding their undead as they've been marching into my lands. Finally, we have the astrologer. This is our cap-only mage, and he's pretty decent. He has 3 astral right off jump, and he gets 100% of fire, water, earth, astral. Generally speaking, the astral is what I would want to use with these guys. The other pathings don't do a ton for me. They're no better than a mystic that has 1 in the path by having extra astral. So if I'm getting these guys, because they're slow to recruit, because they're cap only, I probably want to do big astral things with them, not do other elemental spells. They do also have Fortune Teller, so a few of these stacked up in your capital can really help keep bad events down, and they're not old, so they're not going to get too many afflictions other than if you're doing things like Mind Hunt. A pretty decent one. Astral 3 is also enough just to cast, like straight up cast a lot of good combat astral things, so you could just do it that way. We have plenty of opportunities to recruit things to jump into communions and buff this. So if you want to do big things like enslave or something, you could do it here. These guys are pretty decent. Note that our mages are not sacred, though. So our only sacreds are the priestesses and our heart companions. So Mage Bless is kind of out, unfortunately. As for who I would make my prophet, I would probably stick with one of these guys. This guy with his 18 protection, or this guy with his 18 protection. This one is not old, and he also has a better repel weapon. It's kind of whatever to taste, I suppose. You could give it to this guy. He has your highest mobility at 20 movement. I don't hate that. Do note that you might be able to get sniped if you're not running around with some big things to be with him. Yeah, I think it comes down to one of these 4 for this nation. Unfortunately, we don't have Holy Threes, and we don't easily have a way to summon Bishop Fish, although you could get there with a little bit of effort. So that's at least something that you could get going. National items and spells. As for national items, we have no national items. As for national spells, we basically have the same list that Early Age had, starting in Conjuration. Conjuration 5 gets us Procession of the Underworld, Summon Hound of Twilight, and Monster Boar. Hound of Twilight, we can't do natively. We don't have native death. Procession of the Underworld, we can't do natively. We do not have native death. And Monster Boar, we could get here. We have a hero who can do this. Or you could get a Thistle Mace, I suppose. Monster Boar is a remote attack that essentially you send a event into somebody else's territory, and they have to patrol this out. Otherwise, he causes unrest and kills off population. We'll take a look at these 2 in a second. At 6, we have Bind Carries. Again, double death. We do not have that natively, unfortunately. Take a look at those units. Hound of Twilight is a pretty decent unit. It's kind of like I don't think I'd call him a super bad. He's kind of like a thuggy unit, especially good against undead. And we are in the Middle Age, so we have the big undead heavy hitters, Asphodel, or Middle Era Urmor and Solaria. That is not terrible, although again, we just don't natively have a way to get him. Cares are really not bad. They're pretty good units. Unfortunately, they cause unrest, but it's kind of whatever. They're invisible. They got all kinds of things going on for them. Pretty useful unit, I have to say. But again, we just don't have a way to natively summon these in. The Lampads, again, pretty interesting unit. They have a Banefire Torch, which does area of effect 1 magic damage that is armor piercing and does decay. Kind of interesting. I have had some use out of these in games before. Again, you just don't have the death to be able to get them. They have Stygian Guide, so if you're using Stygian Gate, which is kind of like a high teleportation spell that you can use, they have a better chance of helping your units get where they're going without getting lost. They have Spirit Sight, they have a patrol bonus, they recoup, they have some invulnerability. It's not really high enough to keep them safe. A very interesting one, but again, we just don't have a way to natively do it, so it's kind of here or there, unfortunately. Next up in construction, at construction 6, we have 2 more. We have Forge Brass Bowl and Craft Calcadron. These 2 are not bad, actually. The Kakataros is actually pretty doable because it only takes fire and earth. We have some fire and earth, so with a little bit of work, I mean, you could brand them into an earth 2, fire 1, so you're going to be looking at like boots and probably some firing powers maybe. It could happen. It could happen. He is a size 8 trample. He has a heat aura. He is mindless, so he can't be targeted by a lot of nasty things. 50 morale, okay magic resist, 25 protection. I like these guys a lot, actually. In addition to trampling, they have a decent amount of attacks, including a fiery breath, which only costs 8 fatigue, and it's only sometimes used in melee. So I think even if he goes up above 50, I think he can, if he gets below 50 fatigue, he can start actually doing fire breath again. So I like these guys. I have used them in games before. And because we don't do any other big like fire aura things or fire breathing things, it could be kind of a surprise for an opponent. They're a little difficult to get, so people aren't probably expecting you to do it. They're interesting if nothing else. Next up, we have the Keladon. These are, I don't know, they're not great. What their thing is they are statues that are automatically communion slaves. If for some reason you wanted to spend 5 earth gems and you had a earth 2 astral 2 mage, you could summon one of these in at a fort, I suppose is where you'd put these. I mean, they do have pretty defensive stats, 25 protection. They have all the resistances to everything. As we know with like Watchers, that's pretty annoying. But unlike Watchers, these are going to be communion slaves. So they are not going to be doing any of their own attacks. So I could see having a few of these there and then use them to power like one astral guy who's kind of like your fort mage that's defending it. Do note they don't have any magic paths, so they are going to fatigue out and die to fatigue damage relatively quickly. They don't have a ton of HP. So if you're going to try to use these, you need a lot of them, like a lot of them, because you get a penalty to the amount of fatigue you take as a slave if you do not have the path, and it's pretty crippling amounts. Next up in enchantment, we have our final 2 spells. We have Awaken Hamadryad, and we have Sow Dragon Teeth. Hamadryad, relatively hard for us to cast with 4 nature, and Sow Dragon Teeth, 2 earth is very doable. So for Hamadryad, it is the same one that we've seen in the past. It's in immobile, it summons in harpies. I actually kind of like these. If you drop one of these in a fort, I think it was our Roos game, an enemy had one of these, and it was super annoying to get rid of. 18 protection, but it'll probably bark skin itself. You have blunt resistance and piercing resistance. You have a bunch of harpies that you summon in, and you're obviously going to be doing other nature spells. I actually like these, although it's hard for you to do, so who knows if you'll ever even get one out. And for Dragon Teeth, we get Sparte. These are actually really good, like really, really good. So for 1 Earth Gem, an Earth 2 Mage can get 10 of these guys. Does cost 100 fatigue, so they're probably pooping out afterwards. Or maybe you could even commune them up, and then you could just summon a ton of these. What is so nice about these, despite what they look like and despite what it talks about down here, they are not actually undead. They are magic beings. So you cannot be banished, which is kind of the big weakness of Long Dead. In addition, you are really well equipped. We are the best troop we have, actually. We have 18 body protection with high head protection. We have a golden spear, which is a magic weapon. This is magic armor, which gives you some benefits against it getting damaged or destroyed. I love this spell. I wish it was a little easier to get. Getting all the way to enchant 6, yeah, enchant 6 is rather hard because we have other paths that we kind of need. So I don't know when you have time to do this. But if you get there, very nice spell. Why wouldn't you have time to get there? Well, because we have recruitable astral 3/4s, I think this is a nation that wants to mind hunt. And that is doubly so because we have healers. So mind hunt is a evocation 6 spell. Mind hunt. It's a ritual that requires 4 astral, has a range of 6, costs only 2 pearls. It can hit stealthy commanders, very important there, and it cannot hit mindless commanders. So if you have somebody who leads around mindless undead, you can snipe out their commanders quite easily with this. Very, very nice there. The downside of this spell is twofold. One, if there's an astral mage present where you're casting this, they have a 40% times their astral mage level to catch you. So even an astral 2 has an 80% chance to catch you. If they catch you, I believe your spell does not go off and you are feeble-minded. So that is a huge punishment for that. Second weakness, this spell by itself doesn't actually do anything. What it does is it allows you to cast either Mind Burn or Soul Slay on the target that gets hit by the ritual. So Mind Burn, decent. Soul Slay, really good. Why is this a problem? Mind Burn and Soul Slay are not evocations. They are Thaumaturgy. You would need at least Thaumaturgy 2, which you're going to get 1 anyways. We need communions on this nation. But you're going to have to get at least 2, and Mind Burn itself only does 12 plus damage. If you're firing at anything other than old men mages, there's a not 0 chance that they survive, and you spent 2 Astral Pearls, and you risked a expensive soldier recruit mage getting feeble-minded, and just a turn to do it, just to not kill somebody. That's not great. In addition, magic resistance negates. That is important. We'll talk about that in a second. The better spell, I think, is Soul Slay. Soul Slay is all the way up at 5. So now we have gone to Evocation 6 and Thaumaturgy 5. And our main battle mages aren't really astral mages. They're more likely... Now, some of them can Mind Burn, but they're more likely to be elemental casters. So we are off in the weeds here for this research. But if you do make it here, Soul Slay is a 999 damage spell. It's armor negating and it's soul slaying. So if you hit an Immortal Demi-Lich and they fail their save, they die. Like you are dead. Your soul is dead. You cannot be resurrected. You cannot come back as an immortal. You cannot come back as a mummy. Whatever else, you are gone. And it's a magic resistance negates. So this is very powerful. And we can do it remotely. So let's say you had, I don't know, 5 of these guys targeting an army that doesn't have astral mages in it. How many mages and leaders do most people run around with? Or let's say they're being sneaky and you realize that they are resupplying gems with a scout. Bombard them until you kill their scout with this. Because remember, Mind Hunt can target stealth units. So this can be very, very powerful. Outside of that wombo combo, I do think you need Conjuration 3 at the bare minimum. We have lots of level 1 elemental mages. If nothing else, we can throw some elementals. We can craft some fire bottles, some water bottles, or no, it's water lens now. Things like that to get some cheapo elementals out. We also might want Phoenix Power or Earth Power, especially to give Earth Power to communions if you can help it. Alteration, you're going to want for some self-buffing of various sorts, especially for your priestesses who can do Bark Skin and Eagle Eyes, addition to other stuff. You're going to probably want some construction because you're going to need some boosters for your communions. And especially if you are going to go the Mind Hunt route, you're probably going to want at least this, and you may also want Rune Smasher. So this is a water 2, fire 2 to be able to craft it. With some finagling, you could probably get there. It gives you +2 penetration. In addition to those, relatively easy for us to cast. We can do Spell Focus for +1 penetration, and we can do Void Eye for +2. So without any blessings or anything, you can have 5 magic penetration. So for example, magic resistance 12 on this guy. With all that penetration, he now has magic resistance 7 to being soul slayed. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. How about the regular leader? Well, he's only got 10. So now he has a 5 magic resistance to being soul slayed. So getting the penetration up on these guys is really, really valuable. And you can do it. Like, I would need to find the right guy, like this guy right here. He needs a fire booster, or he needs 1 in power and fire, and he would be my rune smasher builder. In this game, well, we'll talk about him in a minute. I did pick a crafting god, partly not for that item specifically, but just to make items, because this is so, so good. Otherwise, for magic, we're not too great. In the game behind us here, just because of what mages I got, I've had to rely on Falling Frost cast via communions. So I have some Water 2 guys who lead my communions, and then I give them some Water 1, Astral 1 whatevers, and those guys fuel the Falling Frosts. What I've been running around with is 4 communion slaves, so that makes my water casters Water 4s, so they only get 10 fatigue per cast. In addition, this is only armor piercing, so our relatively heavily armored troops don't suffer too badly from the friendly fire, although it's not good. Conversely, if you had just been rolling Fire 2 mages, which for whatever reason I just didn't, we could do Falling Fires. So 2 easy ones. In addition, Blade Wind, another one. This one's kind of interesting in that it's not armor piercing. So if your opponent isn't armored, this is less friendly fire when we hit our own troops, because we will have our shield. Hopefully we're using hoplons, and we'll have a little less friendly fire going on than we might otherwise expect. Otherwise, just you have to play it by ear. Because we have small elemental mages and big communions, you just have to adjust. Just be very careful about putting people in who are going to want to cast, let's say, Blade Winds with people who are communion slaves who don't have earth, because they're going to kill them. They're going to kill them really bad. They're just human chassis. Like, these are not tough communion slaves. These are not turbo communions. It's just a dude. So be very careful with how you do that. Another thing you might consider is trying to get nature into your communion. If you could get some nature in there, maybe you could do personal regen and enlarge. Those would help your communion slaves survive a bit longer at least. Okay, so let's bring all of that together. So Middle-Age Arcoscephale is a nation that is struggling. We have some decent magic power, but we don't have super efficient research, and we don't have easy ways to make it better. We have expensive cap-only mages who are quite powerful, both on the battlefield and via Mind Hunt, but they require crafted items. They require people here to heal Feeble Mind, possibly. That can be a little rough. A lot of research. Evo 6, Thaumaturgy 5 is not a short amount of research. In the game behind us here, we are in the fall of year 3. It was like early summer when I unlocked that combo, and I was scrambling because I had about 1,000 Mikland guys running around, stomping on my eastern border here. And that was before I got double teamed on this side. I was struggling really hard there. Army-wise, we don't have a ton of variety. We have hoplons. We have a lot of hoplons. We have a lot of hoplites. We have a lot of heart companions, and that's basically it. Now, one thing to look out for, right here, before I built this second fort, I didn't really think about it, although I still would have built this. I have independent crossbows. These are an indie that are not super rare, and you want to be on the lookout for them. I would even say you might want to fort these if you can, because the crossbow is devastating. And it's doubly useful for us, who our only other option for using ranged things would be slings, which are garbage, or I guess a couple javelins. The crossbow is an armor-piercing weapon. So what this does, this means that when you hit somebody with this, it will half their armor. In addition, it's a piercing damage type. I wish this wouldn't be named like this, but it is what it is. So I believe the order of operations is you have their armor and then you ignore 15% of it. I think that's how this works. They don't stack together and you ignore 65. So despite this looking relatively meek at 8, let's take a look at if we were to hit our own troop here. So first we would half this down to 9. then we would ignore 15%. So I'm going to round that down to, let's say, 8. So we would have 8 protection, assuming we didn't get shield hits and yada, yada, yada. But it takes these super heavily armored troops and makes them into kind of light troops that you're getting shot with. And this is just a regular crossbow. It's nothing special. And some nations have special crossbows. So do note, though, they fire slower. They only fire once every 2 rounds. But that's actually not necessarily horrible. You get a early volley off, and then the enemy closes and gets nice and close. So you get a second volley that is much more accurate. That tends to be my feel for it. In addition, it gives you +2 precision. So even though these guys are just precision 10 troops, we have 12 precision with the shot. So pretty accurate troops here. Quite powerful. So be on the lookout for those. Like I said, we don't have a lot of versatility. We also are pretty weak in the early game. I struggled to expand. I had to do troop plus elephant expansion to get rolling, and then I lucked into some decent mercs, which helped me. So I used to own all of this all up to here, and I used to own all of this down to here. So I actually was doing pretty good expansion-wise, but the double team has really hurt me. And because I am so slow, I had one army up here, I had one army here, and I had one army down here. I lost my first army up here, while my other ones were slowly trudging over one province at a time to the new front. We're not mobile, we're slow because we need lots of research, and we're pretty predictable. So I do think this is a nation that a Titan or an Awake Expander might be a pretty good option. Something to deter rushes, something to help you win your first war. Speaking of which, let's go take a look at pretenders. For pretenders, we have a pretty large list, as a lot of the Mediterranean type of nations do. For special ones, we have the Grand Hierophant. His claim to fame is he's very cheap. He only costs 80 points. He's got 27 research, which is pretty respectable due to his added researcher plus 20. He also has Fortune Teller 20. Otherwise, not very remarkable. For Dominion 2s, we actually could get a Telkine, good old Flipper Boys of Death, and he is a full one. He can shape change. So you could do something where he does foul vapors with an army. You wouldn't want your human troops, so you'd be looking at, I don't know, algae men or vine men or some sort of poison resistant summon probably to go with him. But that's a thing. In addition to the ability to do foul vapors, and remember, that's auto cast. So turn 1 before anyone gets defense up, they're already taking foul vapors. He also is a master smith, which allows him to count his pathing as 1 higher for the purposes of crafting. Pretty interesting there. And we do appreciate the crafting, I think, on this nation. So usable, although 280 points, that's pricey. I would probably say he needs to come in at dormant because we are a scales nation at heart, I feel. So yeah, that's rough. Other than him, the bulls are pretty decent if you want those. Especially, I would say the Great White Bull. You could take him. You could take him. We'll give him. I mean, I guess this is to taste, but you could do something like Regen and Hard Skin. That puts at -2 points. Either or, I suppose. We're going to need production. We can probably tank that a little bit. Make him dormant. This is okay. But this isn't a Wake Expander. This is Wake Up at year 1. Now, this is okay for our sacred units, but not great. I don't love this. We're not very efficient at researching, so I would hate to go drain if we went awake. Yeah, I don't even know. That's rough. That's really rough. Other options, we do have the Eldest Cyclops. He does give you extra resources in addition to being a Master Smith, but 30 resources is frankly 1 hoplite. So yeah, I'm not super convinced for 250 points. Especially when we have a 220 up here. Some people swear by the Immortal Gargan. I, again, don't really see it. I mean, you do have Dominion Immortality, so you could pop right back up. And you do have a Petrification kind of aura thing, which is pretty powerful. But for 310 points, if you're going awake, I don't know how we're affording that. What would we do? I guess another benefit here was you could get some death. I would probably try to go death 3 so that you could do death 2 in a staff or death 3, one of the two. And some earth. Maybe 4 and boots get you to 5 so you can do some rituals. Maybe I don't know. These stats are just not good enough. That's not enough protection. That's just not enough protection. Even with hard skin, you're going to struggle to get above 20. It's just too low. Moving up to the Dominion 3s, again, we have lots of Titans, including the Great Archon, who has that beautiful, inspiring researcher, in addition to raising your magic scales and having alchemists, so you can get some extra money out of those spells. In the game I was showing off, I actually used a Titan of the Forge. I think this is a great nation for one of these guys. We don't have smiths otherwise, and we have healers. So our healers can easily take the limp off of this guy. So he would not have his slow movement. In addition, we have the 20% forge bonus, so cost reduction. And we have Master Smith, so raise our pathing by +1. So that's pretty good. And he raises our productivity scale by 1. So we could go order 3, production 3 to help us pump out tons and tons and tons of hoplites. Other things you could do, the Titan of War and Wisdom is a decent one. Make some kind of repel bless and you'd be okay. I would probably still try to get this protection higher though. Mid-20s, 26-ish is kind of where I'm less uncomfortable. She also has combat caster, so think about your pathing and what spells you have for her, because she can cast them. Moving up to the Dom 4s. Again, just a lot of the usual suspects. We have the Statue of War, Statue of Order. Unfortunately, we already get the order limit, so kind of eh. If you wanted to go quickness, you have 2 different versions. You could go with the Sacred Geyser, or you could go with an Oracle. Both would be okay. We don't really have any special blood things, so I'm not too sold there. We do have death stuff. You could do something like this, but you don't have any death searchers, so it would be hard to get started. You would probably need to alchemize some death gems and then try to use remote site searching to get going. This would be a pretty cheap option, though. 150 points, but again, Demilich exists, so grr. Demilich, you're just break all the point values for everything. Stop it. Yeah. So overall, I think an Awake Expander, totally usable. I think a Deterrent Titan, very usable. I personally like ones that give production or crafting or both. And I just find it cool that we can heal his limp and gear him up. So I quite like this. I got hammers pretty early. I kitted him out and I took, in fact, let's just go look at him and we'll see what I took. Etsy. I went very, very light on the bless because I wanted scales. So all I took was some attack skill. That's it. And that just helps with my sacreds to be able to repel. For scales, though, we started with 7 Dominion strength. And that's because I wanted to get the Dominion out and get my scrying going. So I knew exactly what my kind of weak armies were going to be fighting, so I could try to make better judgment calls. I'm still a little unused to the Middle Age Indies. Most of my experience, I have played all 3 ages in 5, and I've played almost every nation at least once, but it's been a couple years. So I need to relearn and recalibrate my threat assessment for Middle Age Indies and Indie numbers. Having something that gives me accurate scrying is actually kind of useful. In addition, I went with the 3 order, 3 production, and I just had hoplons and sacreds for days. Like turn 2 or 3, I was up to 7 hoplons per turn, and I just never stopped. I did take 1 heat just to pay for it, 1 growth just because I had some points, 2 misfortune because I do have some ability to counter that, and I don't find that too painful, especially if you have good scales otherwise, and 2 magic. Not only does magic make us get the extra research, remember if you're in magic scales, it actually lowers the fatigue cost of casting spells in combat. So this helps out with some of the big communion things or other big spells I would like to cast. Magic pathwise, I basically took him to craft things. I wanted him to be able to make the astral boosters, make penetration items, make earth boots and hammers, make some morale items / leadership items. I might consider reworking this and trying to get some water, so we could do water fire to do the rune smashers on this guy. In my game behind us, we didn't have a lot of fire gems. I just couldn't find any. So I wasn't able to really make those. So that was unfortunate. Otherwise, he does have some fire resist, and he's just a good crafter all around. Being able to cure that limp is also nice. Because we don't have any holy threes in the game behind us, I actually had one group go one way, and I was claiming thrones with the prophet. And this guy actually went out and claimed a couple thrones that were near my capital. So it was nice to be able to have a mobile guy for once. I would say, though, before you go out and run around, note he only has 3 protection, and he only has a maul. So I would strongly suggest giving him a little bit of gear, even if it's just a chest piece, before you send him out into danger zone, just to make sure he doesn't have an oops moment. The other one I have is Nugs, and this one was mainly to try to increase the research speed and get up to the mind hunt faster. In addition, because his scales aren't quite, well, I guess they're close. We have 1 less production and 1 more magic, so we're just trading a scale there. But you could also alchemize money a little more efficiently. I do like doing that. It's unfortunate you have to do it on your god, though, because he's actually a pretty decent researcher. But I don't know. That is what that is. If you're in a money crunch, I think it's better to spend a few gems and get some money than lose the game and have a bunch of gems in reserve. So I don't mind that too much. The 3 magic is really nice. That bumps our kind of mediocre researchers into kind of okay researchers. And like I previously mentioned, remember, it lowers your fatigue of casting spells in combat. And 3 is pretty significant. So you can really pump out a lot of magic. And we're just going to kind of throw kitchen sink magic at people with our weird random elemental paths. In addition, that helps when you have unbalanced communions that don't have proper communion slaves matching up with what the masters are casting. Makes it slightly less painful for them. Those are the 2 guys. Of the 2, I think I like Etsy a lot more. It's cool to use a Titan. It's cool to use a crafting Titan. And I don't know. I for whatever reason, I really get a kick, no pun intended, of curing that limp on him. So yeah, I quite like that there. Let me know what awake expanders you guys like. You can tell from what I have made. I mean, this is like a third. Well, this is like the final 10% of early age, but you can see in here, awake expander, awake expander, awake expander. So not that many. And of the games I've played, I would say less than 10% probably use awake expanders. It's just not my style. Let me know if you have a good one for Arcoscephale that we could use as an awake expander. Because I do think it is a nation that doesn't mind the help. And double bonus, you have the scrying, so you know if you're going to run into 30 barbarians or 300 barbarians, as we had happen to us in a couple games. All right, and those are my thoughts about middle-age Arcoscephale. Let me know if you have experience with them. I would class these guys as on the weaker end of the scale. I'm a little worried, like I was with early era Calum, about these guys. I struggled in a couple of my test games. Now, some of that, like I said, you just got to get used to the different indies. You got to get used to different nations, but yeah, it hasn't been great. And I think it's just their troops just aren't spectacular. I mean, you have a okay repel line with hoplites, but other than that, you don't really have anything. So hence my initial excitement about having some crossbows here helped me get going on. And I guess I had some indie heavy cav over here. I've just started recruiting to try to bolster my armies a little bit. Let me know what your experiences are here, because I feel like this is one of my weaker nations so far. All right, that'll finish us up for this week, builders. I look forward to seeing you on stream. This is probably going to be a bit of a struggle stream, I'm having a feeling, so hopefully it'll be a easy run, hopefully. Take care and get out there and build some temples, builders. Catch you in the next one.